come and talk was I'm, as well as being a writer, I'm actually very interested in the craft of writing, and I think most writers are. But there's actually very few opportunities that people have to reflect on and talk about sort of the inside life of the process of writing. And so that's, I've sort of picked on you as a willing audience, or half-willing audience, to talk about sort of the inside experience of creation, and in particular to reflect on a challenge I undertook earlier this year, which had a sort of predictable outcome in terms of looking at the process of creation, but it also had an unpredicted outcome in terms of the relationship of creation with feedback from the audience, and how that actually fed into the creative process. So those are the two bits I'm going to be talking about. Yeah, so you've got the word performed in there. So the idea that we're exposing, the process of exposing the creative process to the public does change its character. And that's really sort of what I'm going to be reflecting on today. And obviously, so the whole concept of what it's like to be in that process, the process of creation. Lots of people have written about it. The most compelling sort of description of it I've come across is this, I think it's Hungarian, Eastern European, psychologist, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi is apparently how you pronounce his name. He's got this concept of flow. You may have come across it. The concept of the optimal experience is the way he describes it. The idea of this mental state that you can achieve in some circumstances when you're undertaking something that's really, really complicated, and you're putting in an awful lot of effort and focus. And it can be something trivial, like doing a crossword, or it can be something much more big and productive, like writing something. But it's that state where you're challenged, and you're working very hard to meet that challenge, and all of a sudden you get over the hump, and you are, or as the sports people call it, you're in the zone. And at that point, you're not having to work hard at all. It's easy to do it, because you've got to the right place, you know what you're doing, just get on with it. And that's obviously, if we can find our way to that state often, then we can be very productive as people. And the challenge is, well, do we just have to wait until that happens? Is it just chance? You know, one day it'll happen to us and then that'll be a good day, and the other days it won't. Or whether we can trigger ourselves to get to that point. And so that's an open question, unfortunately. And obviously, but it comes throughout his work. He's actually looking at that, saying, well, are there ways we can make this state easier to get into? And one of the key things is, not surprisingly, is the whole concept of routine, that we can practice doing things which can help us get there. And in the creative writing context, there's lots of people write about it. For example, if you come across The Artist's Way, the whole idea of having a daily routine. You start the day with free writing, morning pages, as she calls it. The idea that you write anything you like, any old rubbish, it gets out of your head, and then once you've done that, you're ready to move on to doing something productive. So that's sort of a trick, if you like, of saying, well, rather than saying, well, you know, the tyranny of the blank page, you say, well, how do you get past that? Well, that's how you do a brain dump and move on. And of course, all people trying to create things have the same challenge. Where do we get our good ideas from? Everybody has that challenge, but the nature of that challenge varies depending on the medium. If you're an architect, you only really need to have one good idea a decade in order to develop a career. because that's how long it takes to turn a napkin sketch into an actual building. So, you know, you don't get a lot of people suffering from architect's block. If you're writing a novel, Sense and Sensibility, yeah, a year or two. Good idea for a novel, yeah, you only need a few, and that's a career. But if you're a poet, like Ezra Pound, that's a poem, sorry, I should say that's a complete poem. The trouble with poets, they get through ideas very quickly. And so, a lot of the process of being a poet is waiting for ideas to come. And so poets in particular worry a lot about this creativity practice. How do we get to the point where we're open to new ideas popping up? And my background is what they call a page poet, a conventional things being typed up and printed out. But one area of practice I've been developing is using haiku to capture individual small moments throughout the day. And so this collection, Travels with a Notebook, is basically from a set of haiku series I wrote while undertaking various journeys for business, pleasure, where I was writing haiku as I went along, almost like other people were taking photos. A series of snapshots, capturing those individual moments. So for example, I don't know if you can read these. So we've got plumbing, experimenting with the shower tap settings, it's Russian roulette. Not found, drifting like ghosts from room to room, mobiles in hand, we search for signals. You've never done that. Refuge, I wake up feeling that there's something missing. Oh, there's no noise. These are individual small things, small truths, not trying to say anything grand, but written as they go along. And of course what's interesting, so from a page poet point of view, is that although those were written almost literally at the moment I was having those experiences, I was converting it almost immediately down onto paper, there's then a gap of, well, in some cases it was years, but certainly several months, before that manuscript got turned into a typescript, turned into a book, and then eventually released to the willing audience. And it's only at that point, when that book's in someone's hand, that I get any feedback at all about whether I have successfully managed to capture these concepts or not. I have to guess myself, I have to rely on my own judgment really, to say, well, do I need to explain or is it clear? I can't tell. I have no idea whether these will succeed or don't until that moment when it appears in print. And so obviously that's quite difficult then, sort of you're having to guess all the time without any sort of feedback. So this sort of leading into sort of what I undertook. You may have come across, if you've heard of this, National Novel Writing Month. There's an initiative started in America quite a few years ago, that's 1997. Their idea is, set yourself a challenge. If you want to write a novel in a month, you need to write 1,666 words a day. If you do that, by the end of the month, you've written a novel. That is a quantitative approach to creativity. But it is a very effective one, because in a way it demystifies the challenge. They say, everybody's got a novel in them. Well, if you manage to write enough words, then so this is actually this is quite a big thing, certainly in America now. I think it was 200,000 people did it last year. And of course at the end of it, you say, well, you may not be very good, well, at least I've done it. And the idea is that you're then able to refine it and do it better. So that's up and running, and you'll see, certainly on Twitter, it's quite widely circulated. And then for about 10 years now, there's the equivalent that has been developed, National Haiku Writing Month, which is February. And they say, okay, what we want to do is get people to write a haiku every day. And they provide, they provide a daily prompt. They give you a word, something to write about. And all they say is it has to be a haiku, sorry, I should have explained that at the start. So a Japanese form, which is normally about syllable count. But you can see the big sign here. These people say it's too hard for people to write to syllable count, and there's an argument about whether that's an appropriate English language description anyway. But they say, well, don't worry about that. As long as it's got 3 lines, you're in. They almost say that literally, so. But the idea is, okay. But the idea of the haiku is the idea you're capturing that moment of perception. It's supposed to be very specific and relatively concrete. So I thought, so as I say, I thought, well, that's an interesting challenge. I don't quite want to do exactly that because I've done this enough. I could probably do something like this, but not necessarily get very much extra out of it. So I thought I'd better make it a little bit hard for myself by saying, well, first of all, it had to be about an experience that day. So it had to be a daily thing rather than a thing that happened to me 10 years ago that I happened to write about. I thought that would make it harder. It did make it harder. Because when I write Haiku, I do actually try and keep considerable count, so I would actually be strict about it. And then in order to keep me honest, because obviously I didn't just write in a notebook and forget about it, I thought what I ought to do is make a public commitment that I'm going to make these, I'm going to write it every day, and to prove I've done it, I'm going to post it online. So everyone will know whether I've succeeded or not. And that was quite a good way of disciplining myself, because otherwise I could just walk away from it and say, in terms of risk, and say, well, forget it, nobody ever knew I was going to do it in the first place, so it's not going to make a difference. So that was the challenge. And so I wrote 28 haiku, so we'll give you anyway. I did manage to do 28. A wide range of subjects, because it's just things that happened to me that day. And I'll read you that in case you can't quite make them out. Supermarket trip. Baby screams her discontent. Mine remains unvoiced. The felling of trees, leaving stumps as vivid scars. Bright silence and ghosts. The fresh dirt rises underneath the dampened cloth. The yeast scent of home. And you see, these are just things that I noticed, basically, that turned into haiku form. And there's lunchtime school playground, chaos of cheerful children, silence by the bell. Gaudy jeweller's shop, every surface glinting, price tags out of sight. A winter's rainfall half fills the drained goldfish pond, no lilies, no fish. Afternoon sunshine, a bitter wind from the west, iced in the shadows. So, a whole range of subjects, different things, yes, I managed to find 28 different things to write about. So on that basis, as a creative writing exercise, say, well, actually that's worked quite well. And I'll come back at the end to sort of the actual sensation of being through this creative process. But coming back to this question about feedback, writing a book of poetry is like dropping a rose petal down the Grand Canyon and waiting for the echo. That is the conventional experience of being a page poet, is that nobody, well, you might get some distant praise a long way down the line, but you never get any sort of direct feedback about whether what you're doing in particular is effective or not. And because I've been putting things on Facebook, I don't know if you noticed, I've got likes and so on, I can actually see, oh yeah, there is feedback, and that feedback, is perhaps surprising, is differentiating. Some of these things were much more popular than others. You might have expected there'd be either no reaction at all, or everyone would say, oh, they're all great. But no, they're quite discriminating. So, well, actually, that one's right. That's the one at supermarket. People saw that, thought, well, actually, that's quite good. That reflects an experience I'm familiar with, and I want to share it. And there's others. That should actually be a zero there. But there are some. There's one that nobody liked. Except me, of course. I'll come back to that. So yeah, so actually having this feedback is a weird thing, because as I say, normally when you're writing, you don't have that sort of instant information about what you've just done, about whether that was good or not. And so it's quite an emotional journey going through this, undertaking this challenge. So I started off down the bottom over here, and I thought, well, it was a win really. So I have a go, well, maybe. Is it worth doing? As I say, I think it isn't. What was I trying to prove by doing it? Oh, I'm not sure really. Was it practical? Was I going to be able to do it? Was I going to basically crown myself a failure unnecessarily because I haven't managed to do the challenge that I signed up for no particular reason? And of course, yes, when I'm exposed, I'm saying, well, okay, I'm good at this sort of thing, I should be able to do it, I'm going to be a failure if I don't. So I started off down the bottom, and then almost immediately I was very surprised that people actually were very positive. Most of my friends and family treat my writing as a harmless eccentricity. They have no particular interest in it, but they don't mind me doing it. And I was very surprised and actually felt, well, that people actually, oh, that's actually quite good. I didn't realise that that was what we meant by poetry. And then, of course, the next thing, so it's nice to have that warm response. And then you write a good one, wow, people say, that's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And you think, well, yes, that's, makes you feel very, very positive. So, this creation going to be quite fun. But then you get into the doldrums then, got the second album syndrome. You've written one that people liked, and then that's immediately, that gives you the temptation to say, all right, how am I going to repeat that success? Is it going to be by doing the same sort of thing all over again, or is it by, or not? You know, sort of that pressure, you know, to say, okay, well, what am I going to do? Or am I going to be a failure? If I do something which doesn't reach that height, does that mean I'm a failure now? So there's a very negative side to it. And then so you come back to the end, when you say, well, actually, there are some poems that nobody liked. Are those rubbish? Well, I don't think so. I beg to differ. I think it was all right. You know, maybe not popular, but it was still all right. And so, in the end, you have to say, well, actually, although feedback is great, it's not actually a good guide for you to judge. It's no replacement for your own judgment in terms of the quality of the craft that you're actually creating. But then, sort of the biggest surprise of all, and again, sort of in contrast to my normal experience, is people actually said to me, unprompted, they said, these are really good, I'm going to put them in a book. And I must admit that when you put stuff online, you're basically writing it off for most publication purposes. So for various copyright reasons and so on. So I hadn't thought about putting it in a book at all. I thought, well, if people want one, I can make one. So, right, what copy of it? Yeah, thanks to the wonders of print on demand. You know, so this was in print in mid-March, having finished in February, it was an unusual experience as a writer and publisher to have people actually wanting stuff. It's normally the other way around. I'm desperately saying that I've got these books, there's someone want to buy them. And I actually had some advance orders, which again was a nice novel experience. So that's the sort of the story of my story of that experience of undertaking a challenge and seeing what it does in terms of how it affects the way we create things, and also how the feedback can affect us. Firstly, I'd say fundamentally, I would say, although I raised the stakes by making it public, it was still really me who I would be letting down if I failed. The public wouldn't have actually minded very much. I could have lived with their mild discontent. It was more, I didn't want to fail myself, having decided I'm going to take it. But the other side of it is the pressure. If you know you've got to write a poem about the day, it does actually change the way you live your life. Because you spend your entire time thinking, oh, nothing's happened yet. Oh my God, what am I going to write about? And depending on how busy your days are, it was a very, very intense experience, because you were literally counting down, saying, okay, well, there's only this many hours left. What on earth am I going to write about? Which is, and that is, it's intense. You know, it's can be pleasant, but you can see it could easily tip over to being unpleasant. If you sort of come back to this thing about, well, if you consider yourself to be a creative person and you can't do it, then obviously that frustration is a very negative one. One of the other unseen effects was that, yes, because I was so busy doing this, that I had no opportunity to do any other writing. So it was essentially a choice. You do this or something else. It didn't lead to a sort of creative explosion of doing lots of other things as well. I thought, right, I've done my work for today. That's it. Yeah, risk of repetition. Yeah, if you're writing about real things that happen to you, and you live a very repetitive life, and as I did, perfectly fine, but very repetitive, then obviously there is that danger that you're going to end up repeating yourself. And yet, dull days make dull poems, that's the truth. Now sometimes that becomes a subject in itself. But sort of, it is an issue that you do want to have a little more exciting life if you're going to have to write about it. And sort of fundamentally, as I was saying at the end, really, that yeah, in the end, although it's nice when things are popular, you actually have to screen it out and not think about how popular something's going to be while you're creating it. When you're deciding what you want to create, you have to actually still rely on your internal editor and not on anything else. And if you do want to talk about it further, then please get in touch with me.